Welcome to Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today. Let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy Color game. And today focus on a game called Great Greed for the original Game Boy. Now sometimes this is considered like the long lost RPG or one of the great lost RPGs of the Game Boy. And I have to say it is a very unique title as far as like the combat system, almost more modern than a lot of its contemporaries, as well as having a very unique and almost humorous story when it comes to like naming all the characters and all the towns after foods and food related things, but then at the same time taking a very serious approach when it comes to like being an environmentally friendly or pro-environmental title as well. And so it's a very unique game to say the least. But how does the game stack up some 30 odd years later as we look at it today and journey through Great Greed? Now this particular video did get moved up in the queue a good bit because one of our followers, the Bear Army, requested it on one of my earlier videos, so naturally it moved it up in the queue. And there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner or later, just comment it down below, and just like Great Greed, I'll move it right up in the queue. Well, let's go ahead and get back into Great Greed. Now I always like to start the videos off by looking at the box art for the game first, and the box art for Great Greed here does a pretty good job representing the game as far as like the fantasy elements. If your main character here, Sierra Sam, front and center, and you can rename him whatever you want, that's his official name according to the back of the box, and he's swinging his sword here at a giant golem creature called Millmush inside the game, which yeah, I know all the enemy names are gonna be like pretty far out there, and you do fight against him, like I said, you know, later on in the game, but not in a forest setting. But at the same time, they're just sort of trying to let you know it's a fantasy RPG, and I feel like they do a good job of doing that with the cover here. Now when you start to get up here, you got a very ordinary tile screen. You got the title of the game right there in the center. You don't have any like animations or any cartoons or any cutscenes to go along with it. It's just simply the title of the game. You do have a really good backing soundtrack for it, which is going to be like a medieval type song, which represents the game really well. And I will say the soundtrack for the game does fit the atmosphere pretty much throughout the entire thing. None of the songs are going to be like super catchy. You're not going to be whistling or humming them later. And the title screen here is probably one of the better songs in the game. And I'll let a little bit of it play right now. Like I said, all the songs are pretty good in the game, but they're all going to have a similar vibe as this one. Now from here you do get to name your hero for the game. I named him Ogle, for obvious reasons, like all my other videos. The S doesn't fit on there, so we just have to go with Ogle. And then of course the game begins. Now our story starts up in a place called the Green Kingdom, which is a fantasy medieval world or an alternate dimension from our world. And there's a hero called Microwave, and she's fighting against this evil gremlin or his evil demon, trying to make her way to the evil overlord called Biohaz, because he's short for biohazard, trying to pollute and destroy the Green Kingdom. And so as she's trying to fight against this evil demon, she's wounded and she tries to teleport away, and she ends up teleporting to our dimension or to our world and falls into a forest. And in the forest, our hero Sierra Sam, or in our game Ogle, is exploring the forest with his father. His father wanders off to check like the acid levels. Then we find Microwave. Microwave explains what's going on. The evil demon appears. Microwave tries to teleport out of the area again, accidentally grabs a hold of us, and we teleport with Microwave into the Green Kingdom. And so now we are stuck in this alternate dimension that's being destroyed by Biohaz. Now we end up in a place called the Royal Refuge, and Microwave explains that her leg is injured and we need to go visit the king, and maybe he can help send me back to my dimension or to my world. And so Microwave hops on our back here, and off we go journeying to a local forest. And the forest is like really easy to find. It's like right there on the map, and pretty much every location that the game tells us to go to is pretty much like right there. There's no like searching or finding in the game. But the sprites here, as you're carrying Microwave on your back, pretty darn good. You know, very similar to like Final Fantasy Adventure, Final Fantasy Legend, or really any RPG of the time period. The worlds themselves and the sprites of all the characters, they're really nothing like write home about, but there's nothing bad about them either. When we get to the action of the game, that's where the sprites are really going to come into play here as being pretty phenomenal. But regardless, we go visit the King of Green, and there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of story here, but it really all boils down to the idea they're going to try to send me back to my original world, but at the same time they want me to sort of help out and fight this world war against Biohaz. And so the story is, I'm not going to say it's convoluted, there's just simply a lot to it that's sort of squished in this one little scene here. And while Microwave is talking to the king, we go talk to the king's daughter, who's named Candy. All of the king's daughters are also named after food here. And the king's daughter sort of explains that there are 4 daughters, and they've divided across the world to try to figure out what Biohaz is doing to try to stop him and stop his evil plan of polluting their world. And while I'm with Candy here, she also introduces me to the dog, which is named Calorie, and Calorie has like a little collar on him, and the collar has the ability to communicate to all 4 sisters, and so they can keep in touch at any given time with the family dog, which I have to admit is a pretty sweet way of adding in a family pet to the storyline and making them feel pretty integral. But while all this is going on, the kingdom does become under attack, and we're trying to defend the king, defend the kingdom, help out best we can. We end up fighting against the hunter that was attacking Microwave earlier in the game. We get our first battle for the game, and you can see right here in the battle, like the sprites are truly excellent. I mean, like in the detail on the enemy sprite, the detail on your hero sprite right here, excellent animations for that, and like separate animations for like the attack moves and, you know, for like defeat moves. It's really good animation. But at the same time, the battling is not just like flashy animation. Like the battling system here is a really good battle system. Like A is your attack button, B is your dodge button, and then every one of the D-pad directions is going to be like a magic spell you're going to learn later on in the game. So you can press like left button, do a freeze spell, up button, do a fire spell, right button to like increase your speed. The down button is going to be like a heal spell. And so as you're going through the battle here, it's not necessarily like a menu choice. Like if you don't push any button, they'll continue to attack you. And so you have to continue like pressing the buttons that you want to do that particular action. And so it's not like a full like you know, menu based or a time based RPG, but it's definitely not going to be a full like hack and slash either. It's like a weird mix in the middle, and truth be told, I've never really played an RPG quite like it when it comes to the battling system. It's a good battle system. But after we defeat the hunter, we journey our way back to the king to sort of see the aftermath of this attack on the royal refuge here. And on the way back there, we do find out that Calorie, the beloved family pet, was killed during battle. And what kind of evil soldier kills the pet of the castle? I mean, like that's an extra level of evil there. But regardless, we get the collar off of Calorie. It's given to us in order to communicate to the 4 sisters around the island. And so they're still allowing the continuity or the integral part of the family pet to at least play into the storyline here. And then we visit the king, and the king basically says it's no longer safe here, and he bestows upon me to journey with his daughter Candy to a land of sushi in order to continue our journey. And he tells Microwave to equip us with all kinds of weapons to go there. And Microwave takes us to a room, and there's all kinds of chests, and we get to equip ourselves with like a shield, a weapon, a whatchamacallit, armor, breastplate, maybe the words escape me at the moment, as well as a helmet. And so you get all of the you know, your equipment here, and you'll upgrade that as you go throughout the game. But this is your first sort of like beginning set. And now you're going to journey to the land of sushi. And before I get like too far into the game, we just sort of have to like acknowledge the oddness of all the names and all of the characters being named after food. Like there's really no like reason for it. It doesn't play into like the fighting against the pollution theme. It doesn't go into the fantasy theme. Like I can't really figure out like why they named everything after food. It, like, I guess it's a sense of humor in the game, and it's sort of funny, like some of the little puns they're going to have. But for the most part, like, it would have been fine just naming them after like normal medieval characters. But I guess they wanted to add like a little extra sense of humor in there. And if like name food humor is like your sort of thing, like, man, this game is going to be like hilarious to you as you go. But for the vast majority of the population, it's just going to be like, why is it named sushi? Why is it named, you know, calorie? Why, you know, stuff like that. But regardless, we're journeying our way to sushi. We have to find this little underwater tunnel. As we journey through here, we get to our first real enemy of the game, which is this cute little rock here. It's got human arms, human legs, human eyes, but it's called a roach, which doesn't make any sense. But it's a unique little sprite that you got. And it's pretty much the only enemy you're going to fight inside the tunnel. It's going to allow you to begin to level up, you know, upgrade your magic, upgrade your health, and get yourself a little bit more powerful before you exit out the tunnel. Now, when you exit the tunnel, Candy's going to say, like, you continue on, I'm going to stay back here. And then we journey on our way outside the tunnel into our first real town, which is called Port Town. And pretty much every town in the game is going to follow a very similar format, as far as like having an inn that you can stay at for $15 a night to replenish your magic and your health, as far as having like a weapon store to upgrade your weapons and your armor and your helmet and things like that, as well as having like a magic shop so you can upgrade your magic or buy new magic spells, such as like freeze or flame or extra boost on your healing spell, stuff like that. And so you're going to want to visit those particular places every time you go into a new city, but also like talking to all the villagers, they're going to give you a hint of like where to go to next. And it's always very close by. Where they recommend me go is a place called Shiskaberg, which is obviously, you know, a little play on words there as well. But it's north of Port Town. It's very easy to find like all of the tasks that they send you on. But as you're journeying out of the city of Port Town into the main overworld here, you get into some more battles, and there's some pretty interesting creatures that you're going to go up against. The main one you're going to see here is one's called Roper, which looks like a little piece of tofu with like little tentacles coming out of it. A terrifying creature if you were to see this, I don't know, like in a dark alley somewhere. Or not even a dark alley. If I were to see this journeying across the floor, I'd be like, what the hell is that? And I'd probably be a little concerned. But there's very much of a, now that I think about it, sort of like a Lovecraftian look to some of this. Like if you mix like food and normal objects with like Lovecraftian tentacles and mouths and sea items, you're going to get a lot of enemies in this game. And you'll see more of what I'm talking about as we journey through them. But the roper here, a very unique looking piece of tofu. Now when we get to Shiskaberg here, it has a very unique event taking place. There's an election between two politicians, one called Krabby and the other one who's called Cabbage Head. And evidently Krabby is promising all the citizens something called a happy factory to solve all their problems and make the place just the happiest place ever. Very, very fishy. And Cabbage Head is just simply saying like, hey, I'll protect you. I'll try to do little small changes to make it a little bit better of a place. Obviously, the real politician. But Krabby is dominating the election, and we're trying to help Cabbage Head here win the election. And when we go visit Cabbage Head, one of his assistants is actually one of the king's daughter. Her name is Cupcake, and she's saying we need to help Cabbage Head win the election, and by doing that, we need to win the citizens' approval. So we decided to go out and fight some of the monsters around the area to basically show that Cabbage Head is able to defend the citizens and to win over their vote. And it's a clever way of like getting us to fight battles, to level our character up, to get us more suited for like later on in the game. And I like it when games sort of give you missions like that. So we journey out into the field and we fight some very unique looking creatures here. We fight one called a Spud Dud. Once again, plant meets Lovecraftian stuff here. We fight another one that looks like an eyeball cake or like a little piece of jello, has an eyeball stuck in it, and when you kill it, the eyeball falls out. But it does allow us to get a little bit more used to the battle system here of having every directional key do some sort of magic spell, A attack, B dodge, and like I said, it's a fun battle system and it's way more entertaining than just simply going out there and selecting your menu option. But after we've killed enough enemies, we go back and we look at the election board, and it shows that Cabbage Head like moves up in the polls, but immediately Krabby goes back up and beats him again. And if we go ahead and kill more monsters, Cabbage Head moves up, and then immediately after that, Krabby takes him out again. And so Cupcake says like something's fishy about this, and she thinks that Krabby is actually a corrupt politician. I mean, what give it away? The name Krabby here. And she says we need to go to find his family tree to expose like his origin story and things like that. And like, I never expected when she said we need to go expose his family tree here, that we were going to literally go to a forest and find a giant tree to find out what his family history was. I guess I should expect the game that loves its puns so much to sort of fall into that, but at the same time I was entertained when I finally got into the forest and I found the giant family tree. But it's also in the forest we get our next enemy we're going to fight against, something called Puddinhead, which is like a giant pail of a bucket here with like arms coming out of it. A very interesting little critter here. But he's really like the only new enemy inside the forest. But when we get to the family tree, there's a fella named Professor Condante. And he says he's got all the information about Krabby that we need. However, he's not going to help us out unless we go to the abandoned record factory. And at the abandoned record factory, find a record or the debut record of his favorite artist called Lola. And if we find that record, bring it back to him, then he's going to give us the full history of Krabby's family tree. It's like, holy cow. So now we have to head to the northwest. We find this abandoned record factory, which just so happens to be the same place that Krabby's going to use to make his happy factory here and make everyone feel, you know, elated inside the community. But we break into the record factory, and this is like one of the only dungeons in the game that actually has a very unique look to it, or very unique puzzle. There's actually like little records all over the floor. There's like records if you hop on, it actually like turns you in that particular direction. You have to actually get on like the little needle that comes down and travel up. This is a cool little dungeon. It's just a shame that it's like the only one in the game that follows a unique aesthetic or unique puzzles. We also fight against a few new enemies in here. We got the Artichoke, which looks as close to a Pokemon as you're going to get inside this game. A cute little fella. Then you also have a knight that you fight against, which is a little less interesting than the Artichoke. But eventually you find your way through the record factory here and you find a little old lady, and it turns out her name is Lola Leftover, and she's willing to sing a song to you about growing old and the sadness of being forgotten. It's actually a really depressing moment in the game. And if you listen to her, then she'll give you her debut record, which you can then take back and give to Professor Condante. But she also gives us a lantern, and we can use the lantern to go into the basement of the record factory here. And when we go into the basement, we actually get to see some of Krabby's henchmen, and they actually expose that Krabby is working for Biohaz, and he's going to use the record factory here, and instead of making a happy factory, he's going to make a pollution factory and spread trash and pollution all across the land here. And so it's all an elaborate plan. And we fight the gremlins off, we defeat them, but they leave behind the plan of Krabby and Biohaz, And so we have that, and now we can journey back to the Professor Condante. We get Krabby's family tree. So we have the weird family tree. We have his plans of working with Biohaz. We go back to our little port town here. We confront Krabby and say, hey, look, we know who you are. We know what's going on. And when we confront him, Krabby gets all upset and we go into our first major boss battle of the game. And I really like the aesthetics of Krabby. I never expected him to look like an actual giant crab here. But he's like something like a He-Man Masters of the Universe crab. But it's in this boss battle, like the stakes are a little bit higher, and like actually getting your commands right inside the battle, like when to heal, when to attack, when to dodge. The battle felt really interactive, and it's in these boss battles that the combat system here is really going to shine the most as far as like actually getting your blood pumping a little bit, trying to win these fights. But after Krabby's been taken down, of course, we've saved this little city, we've stopped Biohazard's plan of trying to pollute or corrupt this area, and we go back to visit a cabbage head who's now going to win the election. He tells me to go to Dr. Bromide, who is in the, let me make sure I get this right, the nation of Chow Mein at Herbal Village, and tells us to go north to find Dr. Bromide up there. And so as I journey up north, Cupcake decides to stay behind. She gives me a pendant to remember her, or put into a little calories necklace here, and or collar there. And then we journey on our way upward into our new nation of Chow Mein. Now our first town we're going to come across is going to be Herbal Village. We walk in there and we find out that, lo and behold, Dr. Bromide has been thrown into jail at the town of Tuna, and so now we need to journey to the town of Tuna to rescue Dr. Bromide from that particular jail cell. And on our way, we get some new enemies here. We get Meek Mush, which is like a blob with a scepter. I like him. We also get a Frank Bite, which is a worm tentacle thing. Once again, Lovecraftian looking. And we get something called Onion Head, which is like a gingerbread man warrior, I guess is the best way that I can describe him here. But these enemies are going to appear later on in the game as well. They simply start changing their name. There are some reused sprites as we go, but and they just simply change the name, which I don't know why they do that. But all three of these enemies are pretty darn cool looking enemies. And when we get to the town of Tuna, now the town of Tuna is a very unique town in the game. It has a board right when you walk in, and these laws change inside the town of Tuna at any given time. Anytime you walk up to the board, they change. And if you break any of those laws that have been put into place that day, you're thrown into jail. And so we know immediately how Dr. Bromide has been thrown into jail here. So we're trying to figure out like how to manipulate the rules in order to get into certain houses in order to break Dr. Bromide free. And I'm going to try to condense all the events of this particular story arc here. But essentially, Dr. Bromide is housed in the Dragon Jail, which is to an ocean down south of this particular nation. However, we can't go to that nation because there's a giant worm inside of the ocean here that'll come up and kill anyone who tries to journey that way, unless you have your sword essentially equipped with a ghost pepper or a pepper in order to kill him off. So then we go off and fight Nick Ninja in order to get this pepper. And so when we go there, he's like a, best way I can describe him is he looks like a medieval Jason from Friday the 13th. That's the best way I can describe him here. A good little boss fight. Most of the boss fights can be pretty similar. They're not like unique moves they're going to do. You're going to fight most of them your similar way as well. But your little helper here, which is one of the princess's daughter for this particular quest, Lollipop, she can continue to heal you, and that makes all of these battles not trivial, but a heck of a lot easier. And I did forget to mention some of the new enemies inside of the castle. We have the Chick Stick, which is a sword-fighting chicken. We also have an enemy called the Wiener, which looks like a man and a sausage sort of merged together somehow. And once you defeat Jason, you've killed all these enemies off, you journey back to the town of Kimchi. You tell them that Jason, medieval Jason, is what we're going to call him, has died off. We killed him. And at this point, they rejoice, and they give you the golden pepper, and now you can officially travel the sea here, fight off the what they're going to call the Whiff Worm, and you can see his little sprite here. Cool looking enemy, once again. Weird little name, but you fight off the Whiff Worm. Then you can journey into the Dragon Jail, which is going to finally give you the opportunity to rescue Dr. Bromide. And so all of this is coming from a town that changes their rules, threw him in jail, threw him in this high security jail, and you have to find all this stuff in order to rescue him. But wouldn't you know it, when we finally get there, he's on his deathbed, he's getting ready to pass away, and he's like, hey, you're too late, and, you know, I'm dying here, but I'm going to give you my entire life's work on toxins. And so maybe you can stop Biohaz with this life work that I've done as far as like figuring out like how he's polluting everything. But he wants you to give his life work to another one of the king's daughters. He wants you to give his life work to a Princess Truffle who lives in the Curry Kingdom. At this point, the jail begins to crumble down. You and Lollipop narrowly escape. You get to the Chacolanima Mountains, and you got to scale the mountains. She gives you the mountain gear to climb it. She says she's going to stay behind, but you need to journey on and find your way to the nation of Curry. Now, the first village that we go into is going to be the Cinnamon Village, and inside the Cinnamon Village is going to be Princess Truffle. And Princess Truffle says that we basically need to equip our sword with the most purest thing in the world in order to kill off Biohaz. But the only person who knows about the most purest thing in the world is a fellow known as Ralph Vader, who lives south of the village. And in order to get there, we have to go through like an animal preserve, and all these animals are going to try to attack us, but we can't attack them because it's a wildlife preserve. Once again, this game is very much of a environmental friendly game. And so we have to go through here. We have to basically flee from all the battles. And I have to say, that's like the only time I've ever had a video game acknowledge, like, we don't want to kill all the innocent little wildlife in the area, even though they're trying to attack you. Every other game is just like, you know, murder everything, get experience. So this is the only game I've ever played where they're like, hey, back up. These animals have feelings as well. And so, interesting little aspect for the game. When we finally get down to Ralph Vader, he says that the only thing we can put on our sword to kill off Biohaz is going to be the essence from the purity of Crater Lake. But Crater Lake has actually been pumped full of toxins from Biohaz, and so he's like trying to eliminate the only way that we can defeat him. So we have to get a neutralizing agent in order to purify Crater Lake. So while Truffle is working on, you know, creating a neutralizing agent for that, I start exploring around, talking to other villagers and whatnot. I end up going down to this one village to the bottom right, and all the citizens are sort of running around in a little circle here, and evidently they're hopped up on something called Ultra Hot, and just makes your mouth go on fire, makes you run crazy like a cartoon character. And it turns out that Ultra Hot is also located inside of a forest up here. So I need to, for some reason or another, go get to Ultra Hot according to my little side quest. Seems pointless, I know, but it plays into the overarching story here. So I journey up there, I go up through the forest. I like how they have like little tree brothers that come down and they like try to block your pathway. I don't know, a little charm to that. Also, like, you know, when you go to a little bird's nest, it says like you're messing with the birds and like a bird try to pick you up and take you away. I guess all these little lessons, like don't mess with the bird nest, you know, that's also another nature lesson inside the game. I mean, the game, even though it's a fun game, they are jam-packing it full of good environmental lessons as we go. But eventually you do get the Ultra Hot, you take it back to Truffle, she has the neutralizing agent ready, and now you can essentially take the Ultra Hot or eat the Ultra Hot, and you can run fast enough to get through all the poison clouds to throw the neutralizer into Crater Lake in order to purify it again. And the fellow who was supposed to do the running was a guy named Papa, and I love the dialogue they put for him because he's like, oh, actually I sprained my ankle and I can't do it. It's like, okay, Papa, we know what's going on here. But regardless, we get like a little mini game here where you have to like basically eat the Ultra Hot flower or the Ultra Hot, and you have to run as fast as you can and try to avoid the little boulders in your pathway in order to get to Crater Lake. It did take me a few tries. You sort of have to memorize the path because they like don't allow you to make like any mistakes on your way up there. But when you get to Crater Lake, right before you can throw the neutralizing agent in, a worker of Biohaz, his name is Darts here, steps in the way and says, whoa, 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 I can't let you do that. And we have to go through a fight with him. And he's a very ordinary looking sprite here. He's not like a cool mutant or, you know, Lovecraftian look. He's just a regular old fella. And once you defeat him, he says, all right, well, you know what? Since you defeated me, I've got the toxins in me. I'm just going to jump in the lake and keep it basically the toxins flowing from my body. And so a sacrifice here. And before he does that, Truffle gives him the neutralizing agent and basically makes him explode into the lake here. And so you have him and the lake all being neutralized at once. And so Crater Lake is officially purified at this point. And so we're able to get the essence of Crater Lake and equip our sword with it in order to finally be able to take on Biohaz. But next we need to go to Spaghetti Nation, and Truffle says she's going to stay behind like all the other princesses have done here. And we're going to meet up with the next sister, who's going to be Citrus, in this nation of spaghetti when we get there. And so we begin to journey our way in that direction. Now we do have a new pretty cool enemy here called Ribcage, which is like a decaying skeleton. And man, like the enemies in here, the sprites, like I almost wish they were in like a different game. And I'm not saying I don't like this game, but like a side-scrolling game with this, or like a dark horror game with some of these sprites, they would be pretty darn cool for that. And so I don't know, the sprites are really something for the enemies. So now we're in Spaghetti Nation. The first village that we go to is a place called Macaroniburg. And within that nation, or sorry, within that village, we meet a swords lady or a swords woman. And obviously it's going to be one of the princesses, but you know they don't say it yet because they're trying to keep their secret identity as they've done within the game. And she asked if we want to join the rebellion. So naturally, I want to be cool. I want to join the rebellion. I joined the rebellion, and she says, well, if you're going to truly join me, meet me in the forest here, and we'll discuss our secret plans. I'm like, all right. So we journey into the forest, And lo and behold, if it was not a Lowell lizard. And so, interesting little critter here. Got a little thrill around his neck. You know, once again, a good, well-designed enemy. But the best enemy in the forest is something called a pie guy, which is like a headless chef. And so he's got his head on a platter, his little chef hat as well. And he has an attack where he like puts the platter out there and like a gas or a fume comes out of the mouth. And I'm telling you, like the sprites are just really something for the game. And so he's one of my favorite enemies in the game, probably just because it's so, I don't know, clever is the right word, or just odd. But as expected, we do find the resistance camp inside the forest here. And like we thought, the swordswoman was the king's daughter, Princess Citrus Green. And so she says she needs to get some weapons together in order to basically get the resistance ready for the next fight. And so we need to go south to a little area and find all of the weapons. So we journey south to a city called Pasta Town, or just simply Pasta. And at Pasta, they are having a beauty contest, and the winner is going to get all of the weapons. And so it's like, what the heck? I mean, like, what kind of beauty contest gives away weapons as a prize? But naturally, we have to compete in the beauty contest in order to basically get all the weapons. And so we're going to enter in Citrus into the contest. And there's a seamstress there who's going to be able to basically create an amazing costume for Citrus. We have to go into a forest, and we have to get all these little supplies and whatnot in the forest from these trees. It actually is weird because it says 3 fruit trees. And there's the apple tree, the peach tree, and then it says walnut. And like, walnut's not a fruit. And so, I don't know, sort of odd on that. But you have to go into the forest, you have to get all of that, and then you have to come back, give it to the seamstress, and the seamstress is going to create a costume for Citrus in order to win the beauty contest. But as soon as Citrus wins the contest, the little seamstress comes out and says, haha, I was not telling the truth, I actually work for Biohaz, and we're here to kidnap you, and we have to fight off the seamstress, who now looks like a giant crab, sort of like a Krabby did at the very beginning of the game. And once we defeat him, he says that this was all a massive distraction for Biohaz to go in there and wipe out the entire resistance while they had no weapons while we were gone. And so we go back to our resistance, and sure enough, everyone is either dead or is in the process of dying. And so the entire resistance camp has been wiped out. So in an effort to try to figure out what happened, we journey off to the canyon, and at the canyon we find out one of the mentors of Citrus had betrayed the resistance, and his name is Shrimp. And so now we have to fight Shrimp, and once again he's like a crab fella, so pretty much all of Biohaz minions or head minions are crabs, which makes no sense because crabs are also against pollution. Doesn't matter. But after we defeat him, the earthquake happens, it opens up, Citrus falls into a hole and says, go on without me, don't worry about me. And so naturally, I'm going to try to rescue her from the hole. I walk closer to it. She's like, no, don't come any closer. The earth is giving away. I'm like, well, the game's probably just trying to get me to, you know, dramatic effect here. So I walk closer to it, and then she falls in the hole. I'm like, holy cow, did I just kill off Citrus? And I was like, that wasn't very heroic of me. And so Citrus has been basically consumed by the earth here. And so we journey on our way, though. And the next nation we're going to get to is Escaras, and the first town there is going to be the town of Fly. And Fly instructs me that the desert in this area is just too hot to cross, and the only way to cross that desert is to get the cool mint, which is going to cool me down just enough in order to cross over the desert. And so now my mission is to find the cool mint. And as you're already sort of noticing here, the game is very much of a, hey, you're in this area, here's your task. Complete that task, here's your other task. And a lot of RPGs of this time fall into that, and the best RPGs are going to be the ones that sort of open up past it, but this is going to fall very much of a victim of its time of task, 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 so forth and so on. And in the process of trying to find the cool mint, we start journeying off. We come across a new enemy who's like a demon with a giant spatula. I guess he's trying to flip over the you know, people from burning too much. But you eventually get to a fellow known as Cadminium, if I'm saying his name correctly, and he basically says that you're either going to have to fight me or you're going to have to end up fighting Biohaz. You got your choice, one or the other, but you can't get out of here without fighting one of us. We're like, well, obviously we're going to try to fight both of you. But he gives us the cool leaves in order to cross the desert to give him our final decision. But regardless, we cross the desert, we're searching for a Cadminium, and along the way we do get some new enemies here. We do get Bug Boy, which is a terrifying look of a grasshopper with a human face. We also get our first look at Charizard, which I'm going to go ahead and say is the early incarnation of Charizard. I mean, Charizard, they're basically the same here. Pokemon before Pokemon, if I've ever seen it. Lots of gremlins we're going to fight through. We have a new spell called Zap. We use Zap a lot, which is like a one-shot kill. But it's like a flip of a coin if it's going to work or not. And we're going to use Zap a heck of a lot, like in the later part of the game here, to do some leveling up. But we eventually get to Cadminium, and he doesn't go by Cadminium anymore. He goes by the name Cavity. And it's like, where in the game did he change his name? Or is this just simply a translation error? And I think it's a translation error or just lack of consistency, because there's going to be another instance later on where someone goes from one name to another name, and it's like, I don't know, something a little bit odd on the, I guess, the localization of the game. But regardless, Cavity is actually a fairly tough enemy to go through. It took me a few tries to get him, but if you simply use more of your weakening tactics or more of your speed tactics, basically help your character be more powerful, you're going to be able to take him out a lot faster. Now, when you do defeat him, he has some like weird little things that he says about like how we're just as powerful or maybe more powerful than Biohaz. And then we asked Microwave, who's also rejoined our team at this point, what exactly he means. And Microwave elaborates that Biohaz is actually from the same world as us. And so he's from planet Earth here. And so he's actually, for some reason, choosing to pollute this, fantasy world over here in this different dimension. And it just sort of adds more depth to the story. So like me and Biohaz share some sort of common denominator here. And so at this point, Microwave says we need to get on a boat. We need to head off into our next nation. And when we get on this little boat here, someone has planted a bomb on the boat and it blows up of us in the ocean. And we are essentially washed ashore and rescued by a father, his son, and his, I guess, like adopted daughter to a degree. And so they rescue us, bring me back, and they sort of get me back to health again. And obviously the daughter we already know is going to be another princess. It's going to be the final princess that we have to meet up here. But the father, Pint, I think is his name, and his son, Junior, are going to play a little bit part later on. But my leg is hurt here. I need to go to the hot springs in order to get my leg healed up. I find hot springs, a good little splashy animation there, healing my leg up. But while I'm in the hot springs, the attendee steals all my clothes, and I have to run and find him and fight through all these enemies with just my bare fist. I finally find him. Marcella, who was the daughter, who's also going to be the Princess Gumdrop. She gives me a sword. I'm able to basically just stab the guy to death. He never like attacks me back or anything. He's just simply almost like a guilty battle here. You feel more like the villain than the hero. But you take him out, you get all your, supplies back. And once you get your supplies back, it's very entertaining. Like Gumdrop breaks the fourth wall here. And when she says that her name is Gumdrop and says the programmers gave them the weird names. Now, I have no idea why they only broke the fourth wall one time in a game. But just goes to show, like, this game has got a certain uniqueness about it that very few games have. But regardless, she says she's going to go to Burger with me, so we have to climb a snow mountain. She puts a little shield around me to protect us from the cold as we go. We get to the top, we have to journey back down the mountain. There's only one new enemy here called the Snow Imp that you fight against, like a little snow demon. You get down to the bottom of the mountain, you go into another little village here, and they're obsessed with kites, which is fine. They love their kites, and there's one fella named Steak who makes like the best kites, but obviously people don't believe in him. Look at his own little roommate here, his wife, sound like he thinks he makes good kites. Yeah, right. Look at Steak over here. But regardless, he makes the guy a kite in front of him. Seems to be making a good kite, and we need to basically pass over the Cape of Salmon. And in order to get over the water, the high winds, we're going to have to find some way to fly over it. Obviously the Cape here. And so there's some side missions with Mr. Noodle and Junior getting lost and all this, but it really just boils down to finally they strap me to this kite and they are able to fly me over the Cape of Salmon into our next area. And it's here we're going to finally be at the town of Burger, which we've talked about like the entire game. We're finally here, and there's trash like all over the ground. There's just garbage like everywhere. And it turns out that this is sort of like the beginning of the dumping place for Biohaz. He's bringing trash from somewhere and just dumping it all over the area and just polluting the entire land of green. And it's all starting at the town of Burger. And so we were in this town. We find out there's a tower here, and Mr. Dustball lives at the top of the tower, and we need to go fight and take out Mr. Dustball in order to sort of return the tower or town of Burger back to normal. Now we fight our way up the tower, decent little aesthetic here. The only new enemy here is something called a chopper, which is basically like a medieval soldier with a giant hatchet, or maybe like a butcher's knife, I guess. And so we finally get to the top of the tower, and instead of Mr. Dustball, it's actually a witch called Time. And I think it's once again a translation error, because there is no Mr. Dustball. Like once you defeat the witch, you've defeated Mr. Dustball. So I think it's just a translation error. The Witch of Time, great sprite, very difficult, but if you just sort of learn how to use like the power move and the weaken move, it goes a heck of a lot better fighting against these instead of just simply trying to attack just full on with like magic spells or just simply your physical sword. But when you defeat her, like she opens up a big part of the story here and says that Biohaz is actually, like we thought earlier, from my planet, and he's essentially taking all the garbage, all the pollution from our planet and transporting it through this inner dimension onto this other world, which is the land of green. And so essentially Biohaz is trying to purify our world, but in the process having to destroy another world. And I don't know, like, Biohaz is obviously the enemy, and he shouldn't try to destroy another world, but he is trying to clean up our planet. And so, I don't know, Biohaz is at least a conflicted villain at this point. But outside of the Burger Town is going to be Green Castle. We go into Green Castle, we're trying to find the king and queen to try to sort of organize a strategy against Biohaz. Some new enemies, we have a dragon called Dracy, a huntress with like a giant rolling pin, and a joker who's like a puppet. It reminds me of something like out of Liza P or something. Cool enemies as well. When we finally get to the main boss inside the castle, it's going to be the original little gremlin from the very beginning of the game called Mega Grim. And way tougher here. He gets in this little process of using the shove move, and like all I can do is like heal over and over and over, like barely getting any attacks out. And it's a really long battle, and not really hard, just like really annoying, because he won't stop spamming the same move over and over against you. But after you finally take him out, Microwave shows up and sort of like just kicks him off the screen. He's like, hey, I can just kick you out of this dimension. And sort of like, if you had the ability to do that, why didn't you do that at the start of the game? And this entire story could have been saved. You could have taken out the gremlin, found Biohaz, and completed this entire mission. And I feel completely useless in the story. But Microwave has taken him out. And of course, now the king and queen, say the 4 daughters, have found Biohaz's official like lair. And the portal has been opened, so it's now time to head to the final area, which is going to be Biohaz's castle. And also, before I go there, the king and queen have these little treasure chests behind them, and they open them up, or allow me to open them up, and I can get like sort of the ultimate armor for the game. And so it sort of makes all the armor you purchase throughout the game sort of useless, because there's no customizing character. This is the best armor. This is the best weapon you can have. And I don't know, that sort of bothers me, even though I like being powerful. It just like evens the playing field for like every player. There's no uniqueness to your individual build anymore. Now, in order to get to Biohaz's castle, we have to go through Biohaz's town first. In order to get through the town, we have to go through a sewage plant at the top, which drops us down into the sewer. We journey through the sewer itself. We get out of the sewer, we go into like a little wasteland. It reminds me of like level 8 in Super Mario Bros. 3, at least to me anyway, sort of the aesthetic. We finally get to Biohaz's castle here, and holy cow, are the enemies pretty darn tough. However, I found one spot where there's like a little pot that allows you to refill your HP and MP endlessly. And so what I ended up doing is I just sort of stayed outside the pot, fight a couple enemies, go back to the pot, fill up. Fight a couple enemies, go back to the pot, fill up. And I just continued to basically grind right here over and over until I felt like my character was strong enough to finally continue up the tower and try to find Biohaz. Now, when you get to the top, you do end up rescuing at some point one of the princesses has been kidnapped again. You rescue her, Biohaz shows up and says like, hey, like I'm gonna give you a little bit more time to sort of think about fighting me. Do you really want to do this, or should we be on the same side type thing? He's like, if you really want to fight me, I'll be at the top of the tower. Come find me if you want. And so I grind a little bit more, and I finally make my way to the top of the tower for the final epic showdown against Biohaz. Now, I adore the sprite of Biohaz. It is such a cool looking sprite. He's got this long like cape, or not cape, but gown on of sorts. These tentacles coming out. It like reminds me a little bit of like a Lovecraftian Omega Red from like X-Men. I don't know. I love the sprite for Biohaz. Now, he's got 2 phases on him. First phase is really easy. You just simply use your power move, get more powerful, continue to attack him like regular. He's out of there in no time. But then he comes back for a second phase, and he is way more powerful. He can do like 300 damage in one hit. But 2 of the two of the princesses are also helping you. And if you use power and you use guard or block on this particular battle, you can sort of keep your defense up, keep your attack up. And it took me a few tries, probably like 4 or 5, to finally take Biohaz out. But once he's gone, you've officially defeated the final boss in the game. And he gives like a farewell speech here, and it's a really sort of depressing farewell speech. I mean, he says he was driven by greed, where these people are driven by love for their planet, trying to save their planet. And then he tells them to never ruin their planet like his people have ruined our planet. And it's just like really depressing. It's like he was a environmentalist to a degree, but he just sort of, I don't know, got off on the wrong path at some point and turned evil on it. But he really did just want to clean the world up. And now he's trying to tell the people in this world, don't go down the same path I did. Keep your world clean. Don't destroy it. And so he's got a nice little environmental message behind it. Take care of the world. But at this point, the tower does begin to explode and collapse, and one of the daughters, for some reason, had made a blimp. As we all hop on the blimp, we sail off, and we go off to the king, and the king basically says, thank you for saving the world, you're a true hero, and in exchange, I'll give you one of my daughter's hands in marriage, and you get to go around, sort of talk to all the daughters, see which one you want to marry. I ended up picking Citrus, just simply because she was an outdoors woman. Seems like a more interesting life. Finding a little cabin out in the country, you know, enjoy nature together as you grow old. And then the king says to go back to my world, finish up any loose ends, and he'll teleport me back here to live my life out with Citrus. And it's so sad, like before I say goodbye to Citrus to go out to my world to finish up any loose ends, she says, I will make an effort to become a more attractive woman. And holy cow, that is just awful. Obviously, I chose her because I'm interested in her hand in marriage, and here she is saying that she doesn't think she's good enough for me because she doesn't think she's attractive enough. I think the world of green needs to readjust its standards a little bit so Citrus can have a higher self-esteem about her worth. But that's a different story for a different day. But anyway, so I go back to the world. My father comes up to me and says, like, hey, where you been? You know, sort of like move on with our life a little bit. And then Microwave shows up, gives a final little speech here, says, lovers of nature in both worlds and greedy as well. And that's just sort of a positive but negative connotation at the same time. And then the credits begin to roll, and it shows, you know, scenes from the kingdom and whatnot. And at the very end, it shows that we are married and we have a peaceful life, and we are living in the kingdom of green. A good little ending to the game in that aspect. But at the very close of all the credits, they actually give you like a little bonus like gift a little bit. Microwave shows up, says like now we can unlock the sound test. We can do a monster book, which is cool. We can like go through and look at all the different monsters in the game. So their HP, their MP, like all their defense, all their stats. It reminds me like a little Pokedex to a degree. And then we can also go through and look at profiles as far as like, you know, reading about all the princesses inside the game as well. It's cool they actually gave you like a little gift at the end of the game, something to look forward to. I don't know, I like when games give you bonuses, and this game, you know, scratches that itch just perfectly for that. But let's look at the game as an overall and put a score on the game here. Now overall, there are a lot of really cool things about this game. The awesome battle mechanics, the awesome sprites, I loved every bit of that. When you were in a battle, like it felt like you were in that battle. As far as like using your attack or your dodge or your magic moves and like equipping which moves that you wanted. A very intuitive battle system, and it does feel a great deal ahead of its time for that. Also, the sprites in the battle, all the animations are wonderfully done, horrific in a lot of cases, don't really fit the overall lighthearted tone of this game, but very, very cool enemies. Like I've mentioned a couple times, very Lovecraftian. I love the enemies in this game. The names, give or take on the names. I'm not a big fan of all the names, being named after food and whatnot, but I love the enemy variety as you're going. The overall lore of the game, I actually like the overall story of the game quite a bit. I like the idea of, you know, trying to save the world. I like the idea that Biohaz was trying to take all the trash from our world, teleport it to the land of green to try to save our world, but didn't realize, you know, how harmful it is to destroy someone else's. And so, I don't know, there's probably a lot of social commentary in that as well, as like how the United States or, how, you know, different countries handle their trash when they ship it off to other places in the world. And so, I don't know, I feel like there's a good message and a good lore behind this game, but the, in this game, but some of the individual story elements were not quite as strong. It felt more of a very task-oriented. Some of the stuff was cool, like, you know, helping with the election or going to the record shop or the record factory. That was neat, but it felt like in the middle of the game, toward the end of the game, it became very, very just quest-oriented. Go talk to this person. Go talk to this person. Go save this person. Go save this person. It got a little bit, I don't know, sort of boring about halfway through the game as far as like your side quest went. And also like as far as like leveling yourself up, the game got a little grindy toward the end as well. Like you couldn't defeat the game unless you just spent some time to grind your character up. And I know that's a sign of like a lot of older RPGs that they've changed in current day, but this one felt a little bit more than some of the other ones. And also the encounter rate, like holy cow, 2 steps out, encounter. Another 2 steps, encounter. And so it'd been nice if they could have just simply made the enemies a little bit more powerful and done a few less battles as you went to make it feel like you're making more progress as you go. And also to sort of fit into the monotonous part of the game, all of the forests look the same, all the towns look the same, almost all of the dungeons look the same, except for the very beginning when you of course got to go through the record shop. But there's not a lot of variety from that. And so it does feel like to some degree like the game starts off of a bang and sort of has a lull toward the middle, and it has a pretty good ending as well. And I know it sounds like from all the criticisms here that I just simply didn't enjoy the game, and that's not the case at all. I actually had a really good time playing through the game because the battle system is wonderful. It's a great battle system. The enemy variety, that's wonderful. I like the overall story, and I wanted to see how it played out toward the end. That was a really good story. And so I liked all of that, so I'm more willing to look over some of these unpolished parts, even the parts where they like swapped, names of the characters from like translations and whatnot. And so I feel like if you enjoy a good combat system, you enjoy finding enemy variety, you enjoy a good environmentalist storyline, I feel like you'll probably have a good time with the game. It's maybe like 10 hours-ish long in order to finish the game out. And if they could have probably shortened it down to like 6 hours and sort of, cut out some of the more lower parts of the game, I feel like they could have had a true Game Boy classic on their hands. But as it stands, I feel like it's just a little bit above average RPG. So I'm going to give it a score of a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. I did enjoy it, but I don't see myself wanting to replay it for at least a long while. But what are your thoughts? Do you enjoy Great Greed as one of your all-time favorite Game Boy games? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check my other videos listed up above and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.